Hello, welcome to the Drive Formula Podcast. My name is Marcus Williams. This is Eric Lichty, and today is our deep dive into Chapter 6 of the book Driving Engagement. So if you haven't picked up a copy of your book yet, you can pick it up online on Amazon or other sites online and follow along. If you're listening in the car or while you're out working or whatever, it's great to have the book so that you can go in and take notes about what you listen so you don't forget and highlight things and make notations. So pick up the book, Driving Engagement. This week, as I said, Chapter 6, our deep dive. So last week's episode was the reading, the audiobook portion of Chapter 6, and this week we want to talk about it. We want to kind of dive into the principles there and how they relate to the rest of the Drive formula, and hopefully help you figure out how to maintain and keep your business from failure and what to do when things do fail. So let's jump right into Chapter 6, addressing the failures.
And failures is a part of life. I mean, people are humans, but it's all about how you react to it and could have been prevented. In a car, you could definitely prevent bad things from happening. The car will talk to you through check engine light, all these things, but sometimes a human will get burned out and overstressed, and there is always a lack of communication that happens, and so that's where the big gap is. But as a leader, do you really know all the little intricate parts that your employees do to make your organization drive forward? And should you be able to do all those parts? Absolutely not. As a driver of a car, you can't go in and you can't generate power to push that car down the street to hundreds of miles away, sometimes thousands of miles away. You can't do that. And so as a leader, why would you ever expect your team to be able to, or for you to be able to go in and do exactly everything that your team does?
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that you're here means that you're trying to be a better leader and you care. They're working for the federal government for a long time. There was a saying, a joke, that people were promoted to their highest level of incompetence, which was basically a way of saying that leaders, often the ones who weren't humble, who didn't have humility, would try to pretend like they knew everything, and they would tell you what to do, but they truly didn't know everything. All they knew are the things that they did as they moved up in leadership. And the ones who were humble recognized that as a leader, their job wasn't to know everybody else's job. Their job was to facilitate or help everyone else be successful. Those ended up being the successful leaders. Unfortunately, that's not as common as it should be.
No, and that's the more I think about industrial and organizational psychology, it's really about the psychology of creating the right right environment for people to really thrive. And that's by looking forward and forecasting. I have a saying, it's better to be proactive than reactive. Sometimes you do have to react to things, but if you can really be proactive in maintaining the work environment, that's how your employees thrive. And that's, as a leader, is honestly your job to make sure that they have everything that they need, including trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's human nature to take risks. If we know that something is failing or something is not working right, but we have a goal we want to reach, we just hope that it'll just hold together long enough for us to reach that goal. We do that. I'm guilty of that with cars, for sure. And there's an example in the book of doing that, where my alternator went bad, but I still tried to eke out as much as I could out of the battery and ended up in basically Death Valley, stuck. But we do that all the time. Oh, I don't have the money, it just got to last me till next paycheck, or it just needs to last until this project is finished. We just need to hold on. And essentially what you're doing is you're taking something that you could fix now fairly cheaply or easily and creating a catastrophe in the future, because you can't push failures down the road without expecting something spectacularly bad to happen.
Yep. And as a leader, I heard a college football coach say a couple months ago, he's like, I'm the one that wins and loses the game for the guys. Because myself, I can't go out there and beat every player on that field. I know what every players' strengths and abilities are. I know when they're the best at their abilities and in the right position. I'm the one that directs all that. They don't direct it. They just have a simple job to do. Not simple, sorry. They have a job to do as a team and to work as a team. But it's really the coach that puts that team together, make sure everybody can thrive, on the field. And sometimes you have to take a break and pull them out and say, okay, huddle or time out. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with stalling just for a minute if you can have a better game plan moving forward. This is the same exact thing within business. If a leader really thinks they want to go and do everything that their employees do, well, good luck in trying, but it's just not going to be effective.
Right. And what happens if you've got that toxic employee that is basically destroying your team? It's kind of like putting diesel into a gas car. Mm-hmm. You have to recognize that employee is toxic and is hurting everyone else, and actually take action on that. And so sometimes it's a maintenance issue and repair, and sometimes it's an actual, you've got to change out the part. You have to let someone go because they are destroying the rest of your team.
Yep, and as a leader, you have to be in constant contact with them, not micromanaging, but know your teammates, know their signs of burnout or their signs of anger. Is there a place for anger in the workplace?
Nope.
Intimidation?
Nope.
No, there really is not. You do that and you get people into tunnel vision, which means that they are not going to be effective at all. They're going to be more worried about their job.
They're just surviving every day.
So,
and sometimes that toxicity is just an attitude. It's a bad attitude. They come to work, they're constantly complaining and griping, and that spreads. It's like a disease that spreads, and you have to, you have that infection. You have to get rid of it. But sometimes it's actual misconduct. It's something that they did, and you have to address that. You can't ignore it. You can't wish it away. You actually have to do something about it. And that could entail doing a full investigation and making a decision of what you do. Like, sexual harassment is one of those things where organizations tend to try to make it go away. They try to make a deal. Are you okay? Are you okay? Okay, let's not talk about this. Hush, hush, and make it go away. And that just doesn't work. You have to investigate. You have to address it in order to retain the trust of the rest of your team, or else you lose it. So you can't ignore it, is basically what I'm saying. And there are different ways to approach it. There are different ways to react to it, but you have to react appropriately based on the actual offense of what's happening. And I think we're really bad at firing people or providing negative feedback. I don't know is that your experience too?
It's hard to I've had employees in the past, and this one employee, he kept having comebacks. Come back. 2 weeks, he had 5 comebacks. We rarely have comebacks because we like to do things right the first time in the mechanic shop. So I tried to go and have a talk with him. I'm not doing anything wrong. Everybody else is. I'm like, buddy, if you don't fill the antifreeze all the way up and it starts overheating because it's not up, that's your part. You have to do this, or you have to do this part right. You didn't do it. And that person just kept arguing with me. I was like, I'm sorry, but you are not competent enough to be a mechanic. Sure, could he have both things on? Absolutely. Could he do the job right? No. And so I was trying to talk to him about it, and he ended up firing himself because he said, so if I'm not competent, then I guess I can't work here. Yep. That's sorry. I mean, I don't know what else to say. So he ended up firing himself, and I'm just like, and it was just, the confrontation really bothers me because I want to see the good in everybody. As a leader, you really want to see the good in everybody, but some people just have a little bit of issues.
And he made a decision that instead of working hard to become competent, that he wasn't worth doing the job.
No.
And that's fine. In fact, that's great. If an employee could have enough self-awareness to recognize that they're not a good fit, that would be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
But we're in such a litigious society, and we're so afraid of lawsuits that even firing people becomes a robotic process that, human resources tells the manager, these are the things you have to say and you can say nothing else. And that's not helpful for anyone. You can have a human conversation with someone without opening yourself up to liability or a lawsuit. The worst thing in the world, and maybe you've experienced this yourselves, is being fired, but them not being able to tell you why. And maybe they're like, you think it's no reason, that they're just jerks. They think that you're incompetent and they want to fight, but they refuse to tell you why, or they refuse to explain it to you because they're afraid of being sued. So you walk away and you haven't learned anything. How can you become better in your next job when you don't even know what you did wrong in the first one?
Yeah, I mean, the only time I've got laid off in my life, I know why, because I had a conflict with my leader that I was trying to get it through, that my leader actually said, I believe you have psychological issues in working in a team. I'm like, buddy, I'm trying to communicate. I'm trying to do everything I can, and I'm inventive. I give everything that I can to it, but that wasn't the leader's job to do that. And then I ended up being laid off about a month later, and that person didn't. And so and they never told me why, but the job I left before said we never had to worry about anything. So was it a performance thing? They never told me. And so, yeah.
Right. And how do you fix something when you don't know it's broken? That's why you take your car to a mechanic to diagnose and help you figure out what's broken so that they can fix it properly. Driving down the road saying, yeah, something's wrong here, but I don't know what it is, so I'm not going to worry about it.
Nope.
Not helpful.
Nope. So it's about being proactive. This whole chapter is about being proactive. If you see something that's not going right, talk to them. Communicate. Have open communication. Positive communication. You can tell somebody that, hey, you're not performing in this area as well, and then find out questions. At the end of it, make sure you say, I see that you're doing this, this, and this well. Always end on a positive. So many people get criticized, but they never get told what they're doing right. And if you don't do that, how does that person feel after you go and tell them you're doing all this wrong? Well, now they're down. Some people are just in that, your employees need encouraging comments, especially after maybe a negative one.
And I think I talked about this in a previous episode, but I have been a leader before where I thought I communicated the employees' failures to them, and then I found out later that I clearly hadn't, because they still didn't see that they'd done anything wrong. And I realized that I hadn't communicated it very well. I thought it was such an obvious failure that I didn't have to say very much about it. Instead, with that person specifically, I needed to sit down and actually walk through every step of what went wrong in that situation, because otherwise they didn't understand it. And I didn't realize it so much later. So that was a valuable lesson for me as a leader, that you can't make assumptions that they see things the way that you do, because they don't. Their perception, their perspective is very different from where they're sitting than where you're sitting. So you actually have to find out what they're thinking, and then you can explain your point of view as well as a leader.
So, I mean, business is simple. It's about communication, organization, and showing appreciation. That's how a car operates. It's incredibly organized. For every little explosion to happen, everything has to be on time. But then there's the sensors that read the amount of air going in, the amount of air going out. It knows everything that engine is doing. It's communicating all the time to the computer so that it runs efficiently. Well, if you want an organization to run efficiently, do the same thing. Communication, organization, and show appreciation.
Yeah. So what do you do if, as a leader or a business owner, your vision for your company is to be a Lamborghini? Like, that's the company that you're building. You want this very specific identity, value system, and everything. But you have an employee who may be very competent, but they obviously don't fit in with that Lamborghini. They're more of a truck person or a sedan person. So they're not bad at their job. They just don't fit in with your vision and kind of what you're trying to pursue. What do you do with those people?
So in my opinion, I'd be talking to them and just ask them what their future plans are, how they want to build themselves. See that, obviously you hired them because of their skills, but it might be a personality thing that they might not work out in teams. After COVID, a lot of people are a little bit more reclusive, and that's part of the things that you have to do. So there's another thing that you can do with that situation. If they do really good at their job, maybe ask them to be a remote worker. And then just have something that has accountability to go along with it, because that could be a programmer, that could be somebody that just can do all their work within a computer. You can get creative in doing that. Some people just, if they're in such a fixed mindset, that they don't see themselves able to grow and they want to tear everybody else down, that's their personality. And that's sad to say, they're going to have a hard time with employment if they need to be in a customer service, internal or external situation, because we all need to get along. My father-in-law told me the other day, he's on the road trucker, local, and he says that his dispatcher gets people yelling at her all the time for little things. And he's super nice and super kind. And he goes in and she actually tells him, thank you for doing the small stuff. These other people would get after me. I'm like, why do you need to do that? I don't understand why you need to be angry, intimidating, to get after somebody else. I mean, I don't think there's a place for that in the workplace.
Yeah. And that leads to kind of a my way or the highway type management style. And if as a leader that's what you believe, then you need to get rid of the people who aren't going to fit your way, or it's going to be miserable for them and you.
Yep.
But that my way or the highway, sometimes your way is driving directly off a cliff. So I think you need to be more open to the input and having different types of people working for you. Obviously, if they just don't fit in the organization, provide a great reference, help them find a job in a company that has a better fit.
Yeah.
But, if they haven't done anything wrong, what's the harm in you calling your friend who owns a company down the street where you think they'll be a better fit and saying, hey, I got this guy, doesn't really fit in here, but I think he'd be great for you. Yeah. Going that little extra mile for them so it doesn't feel like they're getting fired for doing essentially nothing wrong other than being different than you. And that's that's a hard pill to take as an employee. I'm getting fired because I'm different than I think differently, where that should be valued, not. So there are ways to handle it. If you want to be that my way or the highway type of person, there are ways to handle it where you are still providing value and help to the employees, even when you're kind of weeding them out because they don't fit your way.
Well, and they might not have a good work ethic. I mean, there's a number of things that's, as a leader, you have to go in and you have to do the hard things. And sometimes people just don't fit, and they might, really need the job. They might really need this, that. You just have to play every situation. And that's why you need to be a transitional or a situational style leader. And we talk about more in the end of the book, and that's more of a maintenance mode, a servant type leader. That's where you really need to get engaged and see what that employee needs. Because the biggest thing is you want to retain employees. You've trained them, you're part of them.
Costs a lot of money to hire someone.
That's the number one goal. We're just saying that it is an option that you have to look at to see what the employee's doing and look for the best in them still. That's the number one thing. We talk about, if they are toxic, they are this. There's something good in everybody. I believe there honestly is. Sometimes it takes a minute to find it. But
it's hidden deep, deep, deep.
But
it's there.
Yeah. I mean, that guy that I fired, I tried to build him up and say, yeah, you do this, you do this. But the majority of the things that he did were horrible, and he was not easy to talk to. He was very controversial. Anything I said, he would just argue right back at me, and I'm like, buddy, told you at the beginning, we do things a certain way. I need you to do them that way. Well, my way, that's fine. But we have accountability for our jobs.
Yeah.
And if you don't do them right the first time, I have to do them the second time because I have to stay late. So you're putting more pressure on me because you don't simply just do the job. And he was hard to talk to. So we understand there is people like that, but try to be as positive as you can.
Yeah, and a big part of that is setting expectations up front, so they actually know what you expect of them. They can't guess. They can't mind read. Reminds me, we have a friend, a young man who is autistic, high functioning, can do a lot of stuff. He's a great young man. He got his first job, and he went to the job, and he was doing his best, and one day he screwed up. And they came to him, and they weren't mean to him, but they kind of started reprimanding him. And he said, "I'm sorry. You never taught me how to do this." So I was doing my best. And his managers had the wisdom to step back and say, "Oh, you're right. We didn't. I'm sorry." And then they gave him training. They gave him additional training, and now he's doing fine. But a funny comment he made was that he's surprised at how many people get so angry over such little things. Because in his mind, these things are not important and they're easily fixable. And it wasn't it's not a complaint. It was just an observation that he's noticed as he's working in a customer service type field. How people get upset over things that aren't important. And so he just carries on, fixes them and helps them, and he's very polite and everything. But I just thought that was a very interesting observation from him.
Yep, everybody's reaction always wants to be something negative and blame. But as a leader, I mean, he didn't have the right training. So that was the leader's fault. And he was saying, you didn't do this right, but how did he actually know?
Right. And luckily, instead of getting angry and firing him, they listened to him and said, "Oh, you're right. We're sorry. Let us help train you so that you can be successful."
There's a saying that I've been thinking about a lot lately. As you build a fire, you want the warmth, like right away. But you have to do the work first to be able to generate fire and to generate that warmth. You can't go to a fire and say, "I want fire now." Then you'll get rewarded with more wood. Just not going to work.
Right.
And so as leaders, why do we have these expectations of these people? I was trying to trade that one person, and he had a really hard time listening, and he would argue and cut you right off. I didn't get the opportunity. I usually get along with majority of people, but if I can't talk to him in just a civil way, it got to the point that I just ignored him. And for weeks, he'd come in, I would just give him simple answers. I couldn't look at him in the face. I mean, yeah, it was a really, really tough situation.
He's basically holding you as the owner hostage. No good. So the end of this chapter kind of flows into, there's a segue into, I think one of the biggest disservices we do to young people is telling them you can do anything you want. You can be anything you want to be. There is some truth to that.
Yeah.
But not everyone's cut out for every job.
No.
You know, my example was I wanted to be a pilot when I was a kid. But I couldn't do that. Number one, I would have actually hated the schedule. I would have hated the lifestyle. And number two, medically, I couldn't do it. But I just thought it sounded awesome, so I wanted to pursue that. But I had people that helped me think, okay, if you want to be a pilot, let's talk about what that's like. Talk to a pilot. Find out what the lifestyle's like. And I realized, oh, I don't actually want to do that. And that's one of the things we offer is a professional identity resume, and that helps you identify actually what you actually like. Because even if you're you took a job because that's what you believed you wanted to do, a lot of times you realize that that's not actually, you may be interested in that topic, but that's not actually where your passion lies. That's not actually what you want to do. And you can tweak that enough to get to the spot over time. You can make the right decisions, take the right steps to get you to the career, the job that you actually want and that you actually are good at. And it's not just anything. Every person has something that drives them, something they're passionate about, something when someone asks you, what do you do for a living? You can't stop talking because you love it.
Yep.
And that's a process, and this resume that we have a process to go through to help you identify that, and through that and a coaching program that we offer. But maybe the person is just not. This is not where they're supposed to be. Yeah. And your job as a leader is to help them realize this is a stepping stone. Every experience can be a positive one because you learn from it. And sometimes it's you learn that you don't want to do this for the rest of your life. But you learn specific skills. You learn how to work with different type of people. And sometimes your job as a leader is to help them realize these are the things I learned. This is not what I want. So my next step should be A, B, or C.
Yeah, it's all about planning your roadmap. And that's what we try to do within the coaching program, because look at me, I've been a mechanic for 30 years and it's been great, but I have a master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology. How does that really fit? It fits awesome because cars are built on process. Everything that it does, it's a process. So as I've taken cars apart, I've seen how things come apart and put together. Now it's like I want to utilize that in helping people to understand themselves and organizations to understand the processes more that really help production to thrive and efficiencies and people to feel good in their workplace. You wouldn't think a mechanic with a ILP degree would be significant, but it actually is, because all I've done is ever messed with process and how cars operate, to customer service, to all the other things. It really goes in line with it. And I never realized it, and I didn't appreciate it till about last year. So that's why we're pushing this so hard, because you have great abilities. Sometimes we just do not appreciate the simple fact of what we are and the life that we've lived. So
yeah, and I think we joke and call when someone changes careers that they're going through a midlife crisis. No, they're not. They're actually just following their actual path, their roadmap to find where they need to be. And that can be different in your 20s than it is in your 30s or in your 40s. Law enforcement was where I was supposed to be in my 20s and 30s, and I loved it. But it's not where I'm supposed to be now. And so a lot to think about there. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of failure, but do everything you can to get ahead of it.
Well, and learn from it.
Learn from it.
Failure is not a bad thing.
Right. Fix things when you first see them, and learn from them, and you'll become better. Your team will become better, and especially as they see you support them, and when they come to you with an issue, you're helping them. You're providing those tools right away.
Yeah, I mean, failure is actually a good thing. If you think about it, it's the reaction and adapting after the failure happens is what really happens. Because if you fail and then you get down because it's like, then you have the wrong mindset on it. Failure it's something that's going to always happen, and sometimes it's about trial and error, and that's okay. That is totally fine. So that's Yeah,
ask Steve Jobs about that. Ask Thomas Edison. Ask
yeah.
Every great person has more failures than successes. All right, so that's our deep dive into Chapter 6. Chapter 7, next week will be the audiobook, straight reading of Chapter 7, and that's Keep It Running. So that will be... that's an interesting... All the chapters are great. They're all interesting. It's hard to choose a favorite. But please subscribe. Click the notification button so that you're notified when a new episode drops. If this is your first time listening, go back and start at episode 1, where we start with the preface in chapter 1 of the book. And again, the book is Driving Engagement by Marcus Williams and Eric Lichty. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble online, and other bookstores online. So ebook or paperback format, whichever one you prefer. And we will see you next time, or catch you next time on the Drive Formula podcast.
Thank you.